Some days you wake up and the world around you just keeps spinning. It's normal. Sometimes you forget that this very normality is the safest blanket covering us from the terrifying things in life. But then, one day, just one moment, a seemingly harmless object like an envelope on the kitchen counter, next to a still hot cup of coffee, can tear that blanket into shreds. For Michael, that fateful day began no differently. The familiar ring of his phone alarm, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the faint scent of toast. Michael, a 35-year-old architect with chestnut hair and deep blue eyes, was always busy with major projects. For the past 10 years, his life had been a relentless series of projects, from one blueprint to another, one meeting to the next. But he was happy with his work, and most of all, he was happy with Amelia. Amelia, his wife, a talented graphic designer with golden blonde hair and a radiant smile, was everything he cherished. They had built a small, cozy home on the outskirts of San Francisco, a house with a balcony overlooking the bay, where they once dreamed of quiet afternoons, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Yet, the grind of modern life had pulled them apart. The roses they once planted had withered, and the books on the shelves were just gathering dust. Arguments became more frequent, and sweet words grew scarce. Still, deep down, Michael believed their love was strong enough to overcome everything. They were still a family, a couple. But then, on a Friday morning, everything changed. The light cream-colored envelope, sealed with a red wax stamp, on the marble countertop shattered that false sense of peace. Michael didn't notice it immediately. He hastily drank his coffee, said a quick goodbye to Amelia, and was about to leave for work. But Amelia was acting strangely. She was unusually quiet, her eyes staring into an empty space. There was a profound sadness in her gaze that Michael had never seen before. Before leaving the house, Michael couldn't resist his curiosity. He opened the envelope. Inside was a small, elegant funeral invitation with a black border. Mr. Michael Carter is respectfully invited to the funeral of Mr. Lucas Sterling. Michael frowned. Lucas Sterling. The name was completely unfamiliar. A friend of Amelia's? But Amelia hadn't said anything. He turned to ask her, but she quickly and coldly replied that she didn't know who Lucas Sterling was. That indifference made Michael uneasy. Throughout the morning at work, Michael's mind was consumed by the name Lucas Sterling. He couldn't focus on his blueprints. A feeling of restlessness and discomfort seeped into every cell of his body. He went through his phone contacts and social media friends list, but found no one named Lucas Sterling. Finally, he decided to Google the name. And that's when he found an obituary. Lucas Sterling, 32, passed away in a car accident. Michael was stunned. The photo accompanying the obituary shattered his world. It was a picture of a young man, a fresh face, but with a shocking resemblance. He looked exactly like him, down to the smallest detail. A chill ran down his spine. He felt like he was looking at another version of himself, a version that was never supposed to exist. And then, a small line of text below the photo tore his heart to pieces. Lucas Sterling, the loving husband of Amelia Sterling, and father of baby Lily Sterling. Michael's entire world collapsed. Lucas Sterling was Amelia's husband? What about him? What about the 10 years of happiness they had shared? Was it all a lie? In a state of panic, Michael tried to call Amelia. She didn't answer. That silence only made him more desperate. He couldn't work anymore. He drove home, his mind reeling with 1,000 questions. He wanted to confront Amelia, to rip this veil of mystery apart. But when he got home, everything was silent. The house was empty. Amelia was gone. Michael went straight to Amelia's bedroom. He searched everywhere and found a small wooden box, locked with a delicate little key. With a moment's hesitation, he broke the lock. Inside was a diary. Amelia's diary. Michael started to read, and every word, every line was a dagger to his heart. The diary wasn't filled with loving words for him, but with grief and endless sorrow for a dead man. What he read transported him to a world he never thought existed, a world of deception and mystery. Michael continued to read Amelia's diary. The fragile pages, with their hurried, slanted handwriting, contained a story of love, pain, and desperation. Amelia wrote about Lucas, the man she called the love of her life. With all the reverence and longing in the world, she wrote about sweet memories, romantic dates at sunset, and promises for a bright future. Reading those lines, Michael felt like an outsider, a stranger intruding into a world where he didn't belong. He felt like he was reading a tragic novel, and he was the unknowing antagonist. But then, the diary's narrative took a darker turn. Amelia wrote about Lucas's death, about the utter devastation she felt upon receiving the news. She had fallen into a bottomless pit of despair, a sorrow with no end. She tried to live, but life seemed meaningless. She felt as though she had died with Lucas. And then one detail made Michael stop, his heart pounding like a drum. Amelia wrote about seeing a man who looked exactly like Lucas, to the point where she couldn't believe her eyes. That man was Michael. She had met him at a coffee shop Lucas used to frequent. The shock and awe had made her unable to look away. She had followed him, learned about him, and the more she found out, the more astonished she became. Everything about him, from the way he talked and laughed to his most trivial hobbies, was eerily similar to Lucas. She had found a second chance, a chance to relive a lost life. Michael continued reading, and he realized that their 10-year marriage was not built on love, but on a pretense. Amelia had tried to turn him into Lucas. From the foods he liked to the way he dressed, everything was Lucas's habit. Michael remembered the times he questioned those habits, and Amelia would just smile, saying those were the things she loved about him. He had believed her, naively, thinking it was love. But now he realized it was just a desperate attempt to cling to a lost past. Michael's entire world was turned upside down. He looked around the house, and everything felt alien. This house, which was supposed to be his home, was now a museum of a lost love. The photos on the walls, the decorations, all were pieces of Lucas's life, not his own. He felt like a copy, a puppet on strings. In his anguish, Michael turned to the last pages of the diary. He found an old, faded photograph. It was of Amelia and Lucas, standing together, happy. But one detail sent a shiver down Michael's spine. Lucas had a small scar on his right eyebrow, a scar that Michael also had. This couldn't be a coincidence. Curiosity now overpowered the pain. Michael began to search for information about Lucas more carefully. He found the address of Lucas's family and decided to go there. He needed to know the truth. He needed to know who Lucas was and why he looked exactly like him. The panic, anger, and fear had completely replaced the love he felt for Amelia. He drove to a small suburban town where Lucas's family lived. He found the house, a small, charming home with a garden full of flowers. He knocked on the door, and an elderly woman with silver hair and sad eyes opened it. A jolt ran through Michael. She looked exactly like the woman in Lucas's old photos. Michael introduced himself as a friend of Lucas, and the woman invited him inside. She told him about Lucas, about the son she had lost. She spoke of a car accident, of a son who was gone forever. She spoke of the pain, the emptiness that Lucas's death had left behind. And then, she said something that changed Michael's life forever. She said that Lucas had a twin brother who had gone missing as a child. She had searched for him for years but found nothing. She said the boy's name was Michael. Michael's world collapsed. He realized that he wasn't Michael Carter. He was the lost twin brother of Lucas Sterling. Michael stood frozen, trying to process the information he had just received. Michael Carter, Lucas Sterling. Two names, two lives, but belonging to the same person. He looked at the elderly woman in front of him, Mrs. Sterling, and tears began to stream down his face. His scattered memories suddenly became clear. A blurred image of another woman, another mother, and a brother playing together in a park. It was all true, a truth that had been buried for 30 years. Mrs. Sterling, her voice trembling with emotion, recounted the story of that fateful day. She spoke of how little Lucas, just 5 years old at the time, had gotten lost in the park for just a moment. She had searched everywhere but found nothing. A few days later, a wealthy family found the boy, named him Michael Carter, and adopted him. She had tried to contact the family, but they had moved without a trace. She had searched for years, but all her efforts were in vain. Michael listened to the story, and a mix of panic and anger overwhelmed him. He felt as though he had been deceived, exploited, and turned into someone else. He couldn't believe that the life he had lived for 30 years was all a fabrication. He wasn't Michael Carter. He was a long-lost twin brother. But then, another question arose in Michael's mind. Why did Lucas die? Why did Amelia seek him out? Michael couldn't accept this truth. He felt trapped in a cruel joke, a joke he couldn't understand. He looked at the photo of Lucas and Amelia, and a surge of resentment welled up inside him. Amelia didn't love him. She loved a shadow. Michael stood up and thanked Mrs. Sterling. He couldn't stay another minute. He had to find Amelia and confront the truth. He drove away with a broken heart and a chaotic mind. He no longer knew who he was in this life. He only knew that he had to find the truth. He went to Amelia's office, but she wasn't there. He called her, but she didn't answer. He felt like he was caught in a cat-and-mouse game, a game he couldn't escape. He returned home and waited. He didn't know what to do or what to say. He just sat there, staring at the cream-colored envelope, feeling an endless emptiness. And then Michael's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment, then answered. The voice on the other end sent a shiver down his spine. It was Amelia's voice, but something was different. Her voice was trembling, filled with fear. She said she was somewhere she didn't want to be and needed Michael to pick her up. She said she had made a terrible mistake and needed to fix it. Michael didn't believe what Amelia was saying. He felt this was a trap. But then, Amelia said something that made Michael decide. She said she had found out the truth about Lucas's death, and it wasn't an accident. A jolt ran through Michael. He felt an irresistible curiosity. He felt that this was his last chance to find the truth. Amelia gave Michael an address, and Michael drove away. He didn't know where he was going, who he was going to meet. He only knew that he had to find the truth. He drove to a small, abandoned house in the suburbs. Michael went inside and felt an inexplicable coldness. And then he found Amelia. She was standing in the middle of the living room, her face pale, her eyes red. He felt a sense of relief but also an immense unease. Amelia looked at Michael and said one sentence that changed his life forever. She said that Lucas wasn't dead. Lucas was the one who sent the funeral invitation. Michael was stunned. His world was turned upside down once again. Lucas wasn't dead? Then who was? And why did Lucas send that funeral invitation? He looked at Amelia, a feeling of panic rising within him. He felt like he was trapped in a cruel joke, a joke he couldn't comprehend. Amelia began to tell her story, her voice trembling with fear, but also with a new sense of resolve. She revealed that Lucas wasn't the good man she had portrayed. He was an addict, violent, and had shattered her life. She had tried to leave him many times, but he always found her, threatening her and her family. In a desperate attempt to escape him, she had met Michael. She was shocked by the uncanny resemblance between the two men, and in her desperation, she had a crazy idea: to turn Michael into Lucas. Amelia had researched Lucas's past and found out that Lucas had a long-lost twin brother. She found a way to meet Michael and started their fake love story. She tried to change Michael, to make him an ideal Lucas, a Lucas she had always dreamed of. She thought that if she could have a perfect Lucas, she could forget the real one. But then Lucas found her. He had been following her and discovered Michael. He was furious and decided to seek revenge. He faked his death in an accident and sent the funeral invitation to Michael. He wanted Michael to believe that Lucas was dead, and then he would come back and take everything back. Amelia had received a message from Lucas, saying he would return and take everything back. He said he would take back the house and he would take back her. She was terrified and decided to find Michael and tell him the truth. Michael listened to the story, and a surge of anger and betrayal welled up inside him. He felt used, lied to, and turned into a puppet in Amelia's play. He couldn't believe that their 10 years of happiness were just a pretense, a substitute. And then Michael realized something else. Lucas didn't just want to take revenge on Amelia. He wanted to take revenge on Michael. He wanted to reclaim the life that Michael had lived. He wanted to take back the house, and he wanted to take back Amelia. A wave of fear washed over Michael. He knew that his life was in danger. As Amelia was speaking, suddenly, the door opened. A tall, menacing man with a gun in his hand walked in. It was Lucas. He looked at Michael and gave a sinister smile. "Hello, my friend," he said. "It's been a long time." A cold dread ran through Michael. He felt that this was the end. He didn't know if he would survive, but he knew that he had to face Lucas, and he had to protect Amelia. Lucas continued, his voice filled with contempt. "I searched for you for 30 years, but you lived such a privileged life. You had everything. A good life, a successful job, and a wonderful woman. And what about me? I had to live in my own hell. And now, I'm taking it all back." Michael stood up, facing Lucas. "Lucas, you don't have to do this. We can talk." Lucas scoffed. "Talk? No, it's too late. Your life is mine. And now, I'm taking it back." As Lucas aimed the gun at Amelia, Michael took action. He lunged forward, trying to grab the gun. A fierce struggle ensued. In the chaos, the gun went off. The gunshot echoed through the empty house. Everything fell silent. Michael fell to the floor, a painful wound in his shoulder. Lucas also fell, blood seeping from a wound in his chest. Amelia screamed, running to Michael's side. She held him, tears streaming down her face. Michael looked at her, and he understood that even though everything was a lie, his love for her was real. And she, despite her mistakes, had loved him in her own way. And then, the sound of police sirens echoed from a distance. Lucas was dying. He looked at Michael, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. "You may have won this time," he gasped. But his words were cut short by a suffocating cough. Lucas was dead. Michael lay there, looking up at the ceiling, and he understood that his life had changed forever. He was no longer Michael Carter. He was not Lucas Sterling either. He was someone else, someone who had survived this nightmare. Someone who had to find himself again, to rebuild his life. The story ends here for now, but the questions remain. How will Michael survive and find himself again? What will he and Amelia do in the future? Can they mend the cracks of the past? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more exciting and dramatic stories. See you in the next videos.